The notice came on a clear morning, which I only mentioned because Vesper always knew before I did when something was wrong, and that morning she would not come down off the tower. I'd kept the Meridian light for 41 years. It stands on the last cape of a wind-scoured world called Talos End, a stone and iron tower older than the colony charter, and its only real job is to count. It counts the tide. It counts the drift of the debris reef offshore, the broken ring of an old wreck that every sublight hauler coming into the harbor has to thread. It counts the seconds between its own pulses so the ships in the dark can know where the rocks are and where they aren't. A beacon is just a clock that throws light. That's all I ever was out there to, a pair of hands keeping the clock honest. And for the last 6 years I'd had Vesper. She is a storm wing. If you've never seen one, picture something between a sea eagle and a thundercloud, near 4 meters across the wings, slate and storm gray, with a voice that comes up out of her chest like distant weather. The colony called her Vermin when she first started nesting in the lantern housing, a hazard to the optics, a thing to be driven off or put down. I was supposed to file a removal request. I fed her instead. Old women on the edge of the map get to make those choices. By the second winter she was bringing the fish back up to me, dropping them at my boots on the gantry like she'd decided I was the one who couldn't manage alone. The notice was 3 lines long. Meridian light scheduled for decommission. Automated buoy array to replace function. Keeper position dissolved, vacate premises within 30 days. It was signed by Faro Lane Reclamation, which is the company the colony had hired to modernize the coast, and at the bottom there was a smaller line I read 4 times before it landed. Non-charter wildlife on site to be cleared by site team. Cleared. They didn't even spend a real word on her. I want to be fair about it. I'm 73. My hands shake on the cold mornings now, and the climb up the lantern stair takes me twice what it used to. By any ledger Faro Lane keeps, I had run out of time, and the tower had run out of time, and the wild gray bird in the lantern was a line item to be zeroed. There's a current to these things, the way the years just carry you, and I'd felt it pulling at the cape for a while. I'm not a fool. I knew the river only runs one way. But I'd be lying if I told you the hardest part was the order. The hardest part was that I couldn't explain it to her. You can't sit a stormwing down and say, they're going to take the light, and they're going to take you, and I haven't found a way to stop either one. She knew something was wrong from the paper in my hands and the way I went quiet, and for 30 days she stayed close to the tower in a way she never had, circling low, roosting on the rail outside my window at night, watching me pack what little I'd keep. I think she thought if she stayed near enough, the wrong thing wouldn't be able to happen. The site team came on the 30th day. 6 of them, and a flatbed crawler, and a supervisor named Ren Coyle with a slate and a soft, tired voice that had clearly delivered a lot of bad news to a lot of stubborn people. He was almost kind about it. "You've had your time, ma'am," he said. "Long past, honestly. Let's not make it harder than it is." Then one of his crew lifted a capture rifle toward the lantern housing, where Vesper sat watching all of us, and Coyle said, "Take the bird first." Cleaner. I have replayed the next 10 seconds more times than I can count, and I still can't tell you exactly how it happened, only the order of it. The man fired. He missed, a net charge, fanning out gray against the gray sky, and he missed because Vesper was already gone off the rail before the trigger finished, the way she'd taught herself to read a threat in 6 years of being unwelcome everywhere but my gantry. She didn't fly off. That's the part Coyle never expected. A wild thing flees. A wild thing that has chosen something does not. She came down the face of the tower like the weather itself coming ashore, and she put herself between that rifle and me. Not attacking. That's what I need you to understand, because it would be easy to tell this as the day the bird tore through 6 men, and it wasn't that. She landed in the gap between Coyle's crew and the tower door where I stood, 4 meters of wings spread wide enough to blot the sun off them, and she screamed once, that thunder in the chest sound, and held. The net charge had fallen useless on the rocks. The man who'd fired had backed up so fast he'd sat down. And Vesper just stood there, wings out, between the people who'd come to clear us and the old woman they'd written off, and she did not move. A stormwing's wings, fully open, throw a shadow you feel on your skin. 6 grown men stood inside that shadow and not one of them lifted a hand. Because the message wasn't "I will kill you." The message was "You will not get past me" to her, and there is no rifle on a reclamation crawler that argues with that. They could have killed her, I suppose. It would have taken all of them and they'd have lost too. They could all see the arithmetic. So could Coyle. He stood very still for a long moment. Then he lowered his slate. "That thing's bonded to you," he said. It wasn't quite a question. 6 years, I said. She brings me fish. I've never asked her to do anything. He looked at the tower, and at me, and at the gray wall of feathers that hadn't so much as twitched, and I watched the bad news face go through something it hadn't planned for. "We were told it was vermin," he said quietly. "A hazard to the optics." "She is the optics, near enough," I said. "She knows that reef better than the buoys ever will. She's pulled 3 holes off the rocks in fog your array would have watched sink. You can put that in your slate. Registered handler, working animal. Look it up, there's a form for it. There's always a form. There is, too. I'd found it on the 30th night, when I'd given up sleeping. A working fauna registration, charter clause, older than Farrelaine's contract. A registered handler and a registered working animal can't be cleared off a posting. The posting has to be reclassified around them. Coyle read it on his slate while his crew stood inside the shadow of my bird and waited to be told it was over. Then he keyed his calm and I heard him say, slow and careful, that the site survey had been incomplete, that the Meridian Light had an active registered working animal and a registered handler, and that decommission could not proceed as filed, and that he was kicking it back up the chain for reclassification. He looked at me when he was done. "You've still run out of time, ma'am," he said. "The colony wants the coast automated. That current doesn't turn around for one tower." "No," I said. "But there's a difference between a thing that's done and a thing that still answers when you call it." "She still answers." "So do I." "That's not surplus. That's just old." They left the tower standing that day. The reclassification took most of a year, and when it cleared, the Meridian Light wasn't a beacon anymore, it was a registered wildlife post, with a handler of record and a working stormwing on the rolls, and a small line of funding that someone in an office decided was cheaper to keep than to fight. I'm still there. I'm older now than I was, and the stairs are worse, and the river of years still runs the one way it's always run. But it turns out a clock isn't the only thing that keeps time. Vesper keeps it too, the tide, the reef, the hour I'm slow coming up the stair so she comes down to see why. They counted me finished. She counted me home. And every fool with a slate who's come since to tell the Cape its time is up has learned the same thing, the way it gets said out there now, half a saying and half a warning. What still answers isn't surplus.